Today's interview is with Greg Scully. Greg has a really interesting story. He lived in Alaska for 40 years, so you can imagine what that was like. He talks about how he bought his first properties that were turnkey properties just to kind of get his feet wet, and then he realized that multifamily was where he wanted to be. He talks about his first deal, which was really interesting. He had, I think, a few things happen in that first deal that I've never heard happen to other people before. So you'll want to hear that. And then he talked about how he bought a second deal after that and how he managed to push through that first deal to buy a second deal and kind of what he's working on with two of those deals. As always, like and subscribe on Wrestling with Real Estate on YouTube. If you enjoy this interview, give it a 5-star rating, please, on iTunes, or write a great review. And also it's available on wrestlingwithrealestate.com. Enjoy the interview. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler, and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we have Greg Scully on the call with us. Hey, Greg.
Barry, what's going on? Pleasure to be here.
Hopefully I didn't scare you with that intro. I think you were wondering what was going on.
Nah, that's fine. That's pretty cool.
Well, Greg, thanks for being here today and making the time. Do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Greg Scully, currently residing in Northeast Tennessee, the Johnson City area. Maybe it's known as the Tri-Cities area if you're at all familiar with it. We moved down here about a year ago from Alaska. We were 40 years in Alaska. And with kids being of college age, we decided to join Renters Nation and just be a lot more optional with where we live and what we're doing. So we originally started the entrepreneurship thing with a small retail store back home. We still call it home. Did that for about 3 years. It never really took off. At the same time, we realized, hey, we might need to pursue something else because it was the passive side, not the passive side, because this is a very active business, but some of it being set up on cruise control in terms of the income. Even with the retail business, we never wanted to be the people running the retail business for the next 20 years. Our mindset was always to get it to be managing managers. So we started with a couple of single family rentals in Memphis that were just turnkey to get our feet wet. Joined a couple of education platforms that I'm still very active in, and got a first deal in Tennessee, got a second deal right after that. And now we have 4 that we're active in, one of which went full cycle and we sold in February. So currently 155 units that we're active in. 103 of those were day-to-day and like on property type stuff. And that's the synopsis of it.
Great. Yeah, there's not many people that I meet that live 40 years in Alaska. How did you guys end up in Alaska originally?
I was brought there by my parents.
Ah.
Yeah, back then, this is in the mid 70s, the pipeline, there's an 800-mile pipeline that was built during the oil embargo in the 70s, and that's basically what put Alaska on the map. So my dad was an electrical engineer, got an opportunity to go up there on an initial like 12-month hitch. We actually moved back to New Jersey. He was, as he says, basically able to write his own ticket back because there was so much work. So we went back and then just never left again.
Cool. What is life like in Alaska?
I've been on an Alaskan cruise and I loved it.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, and we were right in the Anchorage area, so I don't know if you got that far up, but we were down in South Central where the people live is kind of what I say. So, Anchorage is 250,000 people or something. So, it's a real size city. We lived actually a little bit outside of it in a kind of rural community. So yeah, I hunted, I fished, I had some friends with some remote land. We still have some remote land. So we did the Alaska stuff as well, but really most of the time we were just doing middle America, kids in school, doing band practice, going to school plays. And then, yeah, maybe going out to a cabin at 30 below and go ice fishing for a couple of days or something like that.
So you got the best of both worlds almost.
Got the best of both worlds, yeah. No, it's a great place to live, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And what did you do up in Alaska, if you don't mind?
I did 20 years in corporate W-2 work with Frito Lay. I was a route sales guy with them. So we were very intentional about having somebody at the house with the kids while during their upbringing. And that fell on my wife, Kim. And then as they got into their later high school years, we started the transition pretty purposefully into entrepreneurship, real estate. It's something that I've always kind of wanted to do and dabbled in. Like one of my first jobs was actually my dad helped me buy an ice cream truck when I was 19, and we did that for a summer. And so it's kind of always been in the back of my mind. But for the raising of the children, we chose to be very stabilized about it, and it was great.
That's interesting. You said that you had your own ice cream truck at 19. That's great. I think start fairly early, right? That's a great kind of way to do it. And you obviously have that entrepreneurial mindset. Why did you choose real estate of all of it? You could have gone any way you wanted, right? But you mentioned that you owned a retail store.
Yeah, a women's clothing store.
Right. Yeah. You were the owner of the building, or you were the owner?
No, we leased the shop, and we just owned it and ran it. Yeah.
So what brought you to real estate, you think?
It was the optionality kind of side of it. I like that it's a very mature industry, that you can own real estate really anywhere. If you still need a reasonable team around you to pull that off. You can even do it completely passively if you find the right syndicators that you want to work with. So that, it's something where you can buy where you want and live where you want too. Buy where the market is right, and then live wherever the heck you want to. There's some scale to it. There's the tax advantages, all that stuff that you get into when you start picking up the books and listening to podcasts that, get into more of the details about the tax advantages. And it's a real asset. Yeah. It's a good way to capture some equity in something that's hard for somebody to take away from you.
Yeah. You can see it and touch it, right?
And we dabbled in that. Like I said, we did the first couple of rental homes. They kicked off whatever, 150, couple $100 in income a month, but one would go vacant and they would sit for a month, and at the price level that our rents were at, it didn't take very long for potentially all the cash flow for a year to go away with an extended turn. We're like, oh, okay, we need either 45 of these things in order to get for it to where the average cash flow will be where we want it to be, or maybe we just need 3 or 4 buildings.
That's the interesting thing about Turnkey. Yes, you can get great cash flow, but you can buy a property for 40,000, say, and rent it out for 600, right? Even 800.
Right.
But how much are you making? $200-$300, maybe $400 at most. You're not going to get rich of any of this, right? It's not going to build wealth unless you have, I don't know, maybe $1 million or $2 million that you can buy enough of these properties or whatever that you can make enough cash flow. You're not going to get rich of it. And it's a good model. It's for some people, someone who maybe high income earners, because it's more of a hands-over approach, right? You have someone handling everything for you. It's they buy a property that needs work, they fix it up, they find a property management company, right, and they put a tenant in there, and then you just buy that property with all that process in place, right? Would that be a correct description of it?
That's exactly what we did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they did everything in-house. I mean, you could even see on public record, you look at the own house that you just bought for $72,000. You can see they bought it for 25, and I'm like, okay, I mean, that's fine, but I had to do zero amount of the work in order to get it from a $25,000 house to a $75,000 house earning $900 in rent or something. So, but yeah, it would take a long time to get to the scale needed in single family unless you're starting with a bunch of money, like you said, out of the gate. Plenty of people have done really well with that model. I'm like, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
I like to move a little bit faster.
Do you still own those properties now?
Nope. That we sold them. Yeah, we did like every financial trick in the book. I blew up a 401k. I didn't blow it up. Actually, there's a legal way for you to avoid the taxes and penalties by creating your own profit sharing plan. That might be a whole nother podcast. But we took pension in cash instead of waiting till 65. We refied a house. So we did, because we were coming from pretty modest means in terms of net worth. So we used some of those tricks to get some capital in place so that we could actually have enough to invest. Yeah.
You guys were all in then, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we're full time now with it. So.
Oh, that's phenomenal. So you guys, you decided you went with the turnkey property, you said, to get that experience, to get your feet wet, to have that proof of concept, right, that you guys can do it, that it can be done. But then you realized that in order to be where you wanted to be, that you needed to be in multifamily, right? And what brought you to multifamily? Because then you could have grown a wholesale business, you could have gone into flipping, you could have, done some tax liens, you could have done some private lending, I guess. What brought you to multifamily as an investment?
I think looking back, it was just part of the rabbit hole type thing. I mean, it all started with a Than Merrill flip this house one-day seminar or something in Anchorage. I'm like, screw it. I call my brother. I'm all like, let's go check this out. Let's go spend $79 and take copious notes and use every resource that they mention and see what we can make out of this. Because he had a little bit of experience, had like a 4-plex in town, had a 5-plex in California at one time. So he was like, yeah, this stuff, it does work. I mean, I know from experience that I'm getting cash flow and it hasn't been terrible. I'm like, okay, so let's figure that out. And I think that's probably what got me into the single family rental side, because that was largely what they were selling was residential flipping and stuff. They talked a little bit about multifamily, and then I think it was just digging in, that's probably about the same time I found Bigger Pockets, read a couple of books. Somehow I came across some pretty popular platforms that, as they are now, but they were just getting started at the time, got involved with those early and kind of came up with those. It just sat well with me. The wholesaling is like creating another job because it's very transactional. A lot of people have a ton of success with it. Ultimately, I knew I wanted to be where the involvement was not necessarily hands-on as to swinging hammers, but hands-on as for like I said earlier, managing managers. So that's kind of why we came down to Tennessee here. We've got a couple of projects. We wanted to be close to them. Although we're not self-managing, we're very involved owners. And, so that just helps you learn the business a little bit quicker. You can realize when, maybe the wool's being pulled over your eyes a little bit. And when somebody gives you a quote for something, you'd be like, oh, well, I know it doesn't cost that much. So, And we just wanted to know this market. I really like knowing something very well. It helps me get comfortable. That was like one advantage of having the job for so long. I could basically do it with my eyes closed. You know, things just become so well ingrained that you can just operate with very little thought about it. That can be good or bad, but I think for knowing a market or a micro market or two or three markets that are very close eventually pays off when you get that call from a broker and they're like, hey, what about that complex over off of whatever I-61 by the new Target? And you're like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It can help you eliminate things a lot faster, and it can help you act faster as well. If you're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're coming to me before you even market this because I live here and I know the market. So that's when that stick with itness in a couple of distinct areas really pays off.
Yeah, I think, like you said, knowing the market can be huge in a lot of ways because, for one, you don't want to cipher through every deal that you get sent, right? You don't want to spend 2 days digging into a deal only to realize that it's not in an area you like, or that there's no way that this deal will work. But at the same time,
right,
it's the other side of the coin as well, is when there is a deal that works, you want to be able to act on it fast, because if it's really a deal, there's going to be other people that are interested. So it's important that you act fast with that broker, because you want to try and get in first if that's possible, right? And kind of get yourself in position to buy that asset if it's a great deal. So it can be both sides of that coin, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
You also said that you guys want to be very involved owners, right? But you guys have property managers. So that's something I find myself, right? I want to be involved in the properties I own, but there's a fine line between micromanaging, and I heard a saying once: you can manage the property, or I can manage the property, but we can't manage the property, right? You can't have more than one chef in the kitchen, really, otherwise everyone gets in their way. So how are you guys managing that, and what are you guys involved with?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a trade-off there. By giving them their percentage, you're inevitably giving up a certain amount of control over that property, because I completely understand if a property manager has hundreds of units in a market, they don't want a separate business plan for each owner. It would be impossible for them to do their business. So there's that trade-off. If you're self-managing, it's probably a more profitable business for you because you're taking your property manager's profit right off the top. So you can run a property management at more or less break even with a little bit of padding to pay whoever's in charge their time, but you don't have the overhead of 5 or 6 other leasing agents and things like that. What we tend to be involved in is trying to take a little more of the resources into our umbrella, so that the things that we can control, which are typically turnaround times. Labor's hard to get, I think, in a lot of places. So having done some, a major rehab process that we're still in on a complex, and we've done a little bit of flipping in the area. We do have some contractor relationships. So they do a very good job and have a pretty good Rolodex of stuff. But when we see an opportunity to either save time or money, then we try and go after it. And it's helped, in like July, we had, I think, 7 turns in a single month, which is a lot, I think, for any property manager. And because we were able to use some of our network, we had some crews go in and do turns as well simultaneously with them, and that helped speed up the clock. Because if I lived in Michigan and all my properties were in Florida and nobody was in the market, we unfortunately would be only able to go as fast as the property manager was able to use their resources. So,
was those vacancies COVID related, or is it just
No, they weren't. We're kind of, one of our properties is close to the university, and although it's not student rental, they had a fair amount of students, and because Johnson City itself, ETSU is here. It's not a huge school, but it is a kind of a regional school for some medical stuff because we're also like the medical hub for the region. There just tends to be a lot of turnover in the summer. And that's true everywhere. It seems like it's just a little bit more. So yeah, and that's something, that we would need to work out with the property managers. It's like, hey, we need to stagger these leases out more going forward. We can't have 7 turnarounds in July. Let's figure out a way to do whatever 9, 10, 11 month leases with some of these people or get them to renew. Let's spread this thing out so we're not so exposed.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, and the other thing that we do is we do a lot of our own marketing just on Marketplace and Craigslist, the free things. Kim, my wife, does a lot of that in the background. I think property managers in general tend to be very reactive because there's so much going on. Somebody calls and they want this unit and they want it by the 14th. They do an extremely good job of getting that unit ready by the 14th. So if we can take control of they still do their own marketing. But if we're able to keep that funnel full, so that we always have interested tenants, and it's just like on autoresponder stuff. We don't answer the phone. We just push them towards our property manager. So we figure that's one thing that we can do as well, is just trying to attract as many tenants as we can through. I mean, they're free. Marketplace and Craigslist is free. And once you figure out some hacks and some systems to it, it doesn't take more than a few minutes a day to keep some campaigns going.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably, has that helped during this this pandemic, everything's happened with the COVID, or have you guys stayed pretty full?
We've been fine. Occupancy is fine. There's certainly been less pressure to pay by the 5th. Some of that was because it was basically mandated that nobody had to pay by the 5th. So collections have been good. They have taken certainly a lot more of the month to get them. Yeah, we've had a couple of tenants that have been affected either by sickness or by exposure at work or something that they had to self-quarantine, and they've reached out to us and said, hey, I'm in a bind because of COVID. And we're like, hey, we understand we're all in this together, and we're working with anybody that wants to work with us. And as in most cases, most of the delinquencies are tied to just a couple units anyway. And so that 80-20 type rule, 80% of our problems are just a couple of units. So yeah, overall it's been fine. Demand is fine. We're getting our rent increases as we do rehabs. So far, so good.
Great, yeah. Well, glad to hear it. So what was your first foray into multifamily? Did you invest passively, or did you go straight onto the active side?
I did actually invest passively. Yeah, I invested in a syndication through a crowdfunding platform. And in that case, the minimums were pretty low. So it was low barrier to entry. I'm like, well, this is a good way to get access to the process, see some of the reporting that is done, see what the legal side looks at some of this. And at the time, it was similar to why we had the 2 houses. We were just trying to get some capital to work for us because we knew our transition was going to take whatever, a year and a half. I wanted to be comfortable with my level of knowledge. So, I probably spent all of a year or more on the education side before I felt comfortable enough to invest more actively. So yeah, it was a small syndication.
How was that process with the crowdfunding? Is it very similar to a normal syndication? Are there any real differences? I've never invested with a crowdfunding.
No, it was I don't know if it was a 5 or 6B or C. It has since sold and it turned profit and everything was fine. I think they held it 2.5 years or something before they sold it. It didn't reach their projections, but I was still happy with the returns. So, yeah, it was very straightforward. Signed up online, you self-declare whether you're accredited or sophisticated. Actually, in this case, we invested through an entity. We invested through our business entity, which was allowed. And they sent monthly reports. They sent quarterly returns and did a very good job on the communication side. And, I'd do it again. I don't expect to be active in every deal that we invest with going forward. We're more than happy to invest passively with the right partners and stuff. I think it's a great way to go about it.
What is the reason behind that?
Just lack of, there's only so much time in the day. And a little bit of diversity of market. If I know somebody in Dallas that I know well, and I know they've been investing there for a long time, and maybe they're vertically integrated with management, seen them perform a good deal. There's no way that I would go to Dallas and find a deal, because the only way I would be comfortable doing it would be through relationships. So if they've got a good deal and nothing's really happening in my backyard, okay, that's fine.
You get to see what other syndicators are doing, right? What are the general partners doing with their deals?
Yeah.
So that's interesting as well. So tell us about your first ever active deal.
We still have it. It's here in Johnson City. It was a very heavy lift. It's still a very heavy lift. It was at 85% occupied when we bought it from a mom and pop owner, well under rents. Needed some significant rehab, including a bunch of exterior decking. As we got a few months into the repositioning plan, the existing tenant base got wind of change coming, and they basically all left. So we went to zero occupancy. Not right away. It took a couple months, but it went right off the board and went down, and we ended up having like a few tenants in each of 3 buildings. And at some point you're like, let's just pull the Band-Aid off, empty these buildings, and get to work. So yeah, that is not the easiest project. That's the one I said, in the intro, where I ended up being all day on site unexpectedly today. It was that project. So
wow, that's incredible. I'm sorry that happened, but I'm sure it was a learning process. What was the size of the property? How many units?
62 units. So
you're talking, it had what, maybe 45 tenants, 40 to about 45
yeah
tenants?
Something like that. Yeah.
And then they all left about one
they all left within a few months. Yeah.
Wow. And I'm guessing you had, the business plan didn't cover that at all, right? I'm guessing
the business plan didn't cover that at all. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother episode there. What's that?
Maybe talk to us a little bit how you were able to handle that, how you were able to overcome that, and what you had in place that made you able to survive that, because I'm sure a lot of people. It came down
to putting more capital in the project. There's no way around it. Yep, we are putting more capital in the project, and we're maybe looking to actually bring in more capital with another equity partner. So this is bridge loan type product. So we, now we're 40% occupied. The business plan is proven. We're getting our market rents, but you get in that tough spot where you're undercapitalized. It's hard to keep the momentum going. So we're in this, I wouldn't say it's a bad spot. It's a difficult spot, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, we're working on getting some new debt, bringing some new money in so we can just accelerate the timeline. We had a contractor problem. We had COVID. because there was some rehab money that was approved, but then held back as we went into March. So it's been challenging, to say the least.
Yeah. I bet. So what was the initial business plan, and why did you guys like the deal?
The initial business plan, which is still really the same business plan, it's just the timeline has changed, is like a refi and roll. I mean, they were seriously under market, a couple $250 a unit. So we're going in and it's pretty much getting full turns, all surfaces, all paint, new kitchen cabinets, new vanities. We're updating the lighting, the plumbing fixtures. So it's basically modernizing the units to kind of like a best-in-class workforce housing. It's straight up workforce housing. It's a larger complex in a very good neighborhood in a great location. So it was the the ugly duckling in the farmyard. So we're turning it around. Fortunately, the neighborhood's fine with it. They like what we're doing because it was not a well-respected property in the community before we came in. So they're appreciative of our efforts, and we're turning it around. So eventually, we're long-term buy and hold type people. So eventually, we want to refi to obviously more permanent debt, agency debt if we can get it. Gets some of our capital back at least, and then just hold.
Who is involved in this deal? Just you and your wife, or did you have other people?
No, there's 5 or 6 partners. So there's a small group of us. It's not a syndication.
So you're all on the general partner?
Yep. It's all, yep.
We're, joint venture?
Yep, joint venture, yep.
Okay. And then how are they feeling about everything? What is everyone's role? Because obviously with that many people on the GP side, I'm guessing you need to have everyone's roles clearly defined.
Yeah, most of them are out of state. My main partner and I here are the boots on the ground project managers. We have the people that are doing the accounting side of it. We have the people that are doing more the legal side of it. We exchange, hats as we need to going through. But yeah, his name's Darren. It's hard for me to say his name without talk about him without saying his name. My partner Darren and I are local here, and we're doing the project management side of it.
Looking back, is there anything thinking maybe there could be a lesson that people could learn? Was there anything you would have done differently in terms of trying to manage that tenant base and keep them in so you didn't go, occupancy didn't drop? Or was it?
Maybe the writing was on the wall a little bit, and what I mean by that is, anytime you have very low rents, in-place rents without strong leases to back them up, there's very little incentive for the tenant base to stick around. And if they feel like things are going to change in a way that will cost them more money, they're just going to go find the next place that is at that price point that they're used to. So when other people bring up heavy lift projects like this, I just tell them, expect it to go to zero. If you're at whatever, 50, 60, 70%, and it's for some reason, there's a lot of variables here, but what sticks out is that if they're at a very low market rent relative to other properties, and the general condition of them is also part of what's driving that very low rent, because these places need a lot of work. 70s build, a lot of paneling, not much had been done to it. It was an accidental landlord type situation from an estate. So it was being run, but it wasn't being run like a business. So yeah, it's just capitalize well in the beginning, build in a bunch of contingencies, and just, it's one of those things. It is what it is. What are you going to do? Throw up your hands in the air and just give up? You just got to roll with it.
Once you make it through, I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're learning a lot. I mean, that's, if we're learning a lot, and we are, no doubt. Yeah, yeah.
And that not only is the profit invaluable, but what you learn in terms of being able to bring to other projects and other properties that you buy is, like you said, is invaluable. Is worth more than the dollar amount that you'll get at the end, I imagine.
Yeah, right.
Or maybe you'll make millions. That would be great too, I'm sure. But
yeah,
the experience is invaluable. What, if you don't mind me asking, what did you guys pay for it, and what kind of renovation budget did you guys have up front?
It was a $1.25 million purchase, and full renovation budget, pushing yeah, this is from memory, so around 800,000. $10,000 a unit interior, and then like I said, it needed a ton of work on some exterior decks that were deflecting, and they were actually under notice from the city for safety reasons that you need to address this or find a new owner or something, or we may have to take official action for safety reasons to get this problem addressed. So that alone was $350,000 in exterior deck work that was done. But the ARV supports it.
Yeah.
The timeline is just taking a lot of the potential profit away.
No, I'm sure you mentioned a little bit about marketplace and Craigslist. I'm sure you've been trying to figure out how to lease this place up, right? Are there any other tidbits that you can kind of share with us about trying to lease, trying to lease this place up and trying to get tenants in? Is there any secret sauce to that?
We haven't really found a secret sauce to it, and I think that goes back to some of that trade-off when using a third-party manager, because these properties don't support an on-site manager or staff. It's harder to do things. What is it when you put furniture in a unit?
Stage it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's harder to do some light staging and things like that because there's not somebody on site to manage that or things like that. So yeah, that's part of like that scale thing. We're in the 20 to whatever 70 type range. You're a little more limited because you may not have as much direct attention to the property from a single personality that will really get to know the property and be able to sell it a little more effectively. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. If you find the secret sauce, bottle it and sell it.
I was going to ask you about staging because we both listened to Brian, right?
Yeah, man, that's exactly where I got that from. I was like, we need to be doing, and that's something that we are going to move to start doing. And for your listeners, we're talking about maybe bringing in some silk plants, dress up the kitchen so it looks like a kitchen, add a shower curtain, maybe throw some rugs down. I mean, if you got a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath flat, it might be a little more difficult to do some light staging. But what we talk about a lot is that the bar can sometimes be set fairly low to differentiate yourself from your customers, and that can not only be things like light staging, that can also just be things like having the fixtures that are currently trending, to go and change doorknobs and maybe throw in a little bit fancier ceiling fan if that's part of your rehab plan. The actual cost of doing that and just grabbing the contractor grade stuff won't be a whole lot, and you may be able to get maybe closer to that phase 2 type rent that you're looking for. So just those little additions. Yeah, okay, you got the 2-color scheme paint going and you put the right vinyl down, but if you do another $200 to to change some of the fixtures, that might get you 25 more bucks than the other guy, or it may get you the tenant in an otherwise very competitive market, because they want to everybody wants to feel like they're living in a cool, clean, modern place that they can be proud of, so yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. And it's about, like you said, attracting, if your unit is nicer as well, a touch nicer than the surrounding area, like you said, just spending that little, you're going to have your pick then of the good tenants as well. Hopefully you're going to attract
right. Yeah,
it's all about tenants, right? What we do is all about tenants, finding that
yeah.
that's going to treat your property right.
And you can test things that way easily without instead of going straight to courts and finding you don't get it, maybe do something where you're doing a gooseneck sink fixture in the kitchen and adding USB GFCI outlets or something like that, or Nest. Those are far less expensive compared to throwing quartz or granite down. And once that money's spent, it's spent. So it might be a little while before you get it. So yeah, being able to test some different marks, and we did that on a rehab. We had a bunch of paneling, and we were doing knockdown, which means you make the paneling look like sheetrock, basically. It was very time consuming. It looked great, but we were trying to speed up the clock, and we said, well, this next unit, let's just paint the paneling and see if we get the same rent. And we got the same rent. We're like, well, we're not doing knockdown anymore. So it was like a little tiny experiment in over rehabbing. It's like, okay, this is not necessary to get the rents that we've projected. Let's back off of that, and we can put that money, more into contingency stuff. That'll be available to do something that has to be done, like an AC condenser that just breaks because they break.
How would you maybe suggest that people decide on, obviously you can experiment a little, but you have maybe the first unit that you're doing in a project, a business plan is to upgrade the unit and get higher rents. How would you suggest that they decide on what kind of improvements to do, right? Because if you're on a C-class properties, you're probably going to do different improvements to an A-class property, right? How would you suggest people decide on that? What the improvements would be?
I mean, you can go tour other property, go tour your comps, especially if they're very close. If they have an open house or something, send a ghost shopper in of some kind. And a lot of times you can just find that out online, because anybody that does a brand new turn, they're always going to put their best pictures in their marketing, even though 85% of the other units still don't have stainless. They have white. They have white refrigerators, but the one we're having the pictures got stainless. So, I mean, that might be some of the easiest ways, and see what they're getting. And then just test. Yeah.
And it's knowing your market, right? Knowing what.
Yeah, it's knowing your market. Yeah.
What are they doing in that area to get those rents? Whatever rents.
And that goes back to like an advantage of the third party management is that they have a very intense knowledge of their market, because if they have hundreds of units, inevitably they have rehabbed some stuff recently, and our manager has been very helpful for things like that. Like we wanted to put ceiling fans in some of our units, and they were quite honest, and they said that may not be necessary for the market rent that you're looking at. We usually reserve ceiling fans for a little higher market rent, because a lot of times they can just lead to work orders, because a kid will go up there and pull the chain out and now it's not working. So now you have a work order for an $80 ceiling fan. So that can be a great example of when a third party manager can really help you out. Is their knowledge of what has worked, what is working, and what may be working, for the next 4 months or something.
Yeah. I think property managers are a great resource, right? Because they're in.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
They've been in the business. Hopefully they've been in the business a while, and they're in it on a daily basis, right? They go, they're not just managing your property; they're managing hopefully, other size similar properties, and so they know what the market will bear, what is good, what is bad, what is needed, what is needed. Like you said, that's a prime example of. I never would have thought about that. For one, I would just be thinking about the rent, right? Is my ceiling fan going to get me more rent, right? Well, it may, but if it's only a little bit, is it worth it to have? You said to have all those issues maybe with work orders, people, the ceiling fans break. That's really interesting. How did you guys decide on your property manager? While we're talking about that, that might be an interesting thing to kind of.
We basically went through an interview process. This is a fairly small market, so there's not a lot of them that are in the apartment side of it. So there's only a couple that deal with unit counts of 20 or more. There's quite a few that do some single family, do some smaller multifamily, but in our market here in the Tri-Cities area, there's just a few that are capable of the apartment side of it. So yeah, it was just an interview process. And
what were you guys looking for in a property manager when you were doing that?
We liked that they have most of their maintenance in-house, including licensed HVAC people. That can save you a lot of money if you're not getting dinged on emergency calls and stuff. Usually when managers have licensed and certified techs, like in HVAC, they earn a higher wage, first of all, because they have those certifications, but they're also just available to do other repairs and maintenance work. So yeah, we found that to be very helpful, that they have a pretty large component of repairs and maintenance that is under their payroll.
Were you looking for them to handle the project management as well, or were you guys taking that?
In this case, it's not something that they really do. They don't have a construction component to their property management, so they don't do a project management. It may be something that they would do on a one-off basis, but it's not like part of their business offerings right now. So yeah, we just kept it in-house, and and then our GC is involved in that as well, of course.
You mentioned earlier as well that this property doesn't support on-site an on-site manager and on-site maintenance staff. At what point do you think, because you guys are at 62, I think you said that it's got to be pretty close so that you would think that, right? We've
got the 62 there. We've got 49. We've got 49 on another property here in Johnson City. So it's something that we've talked about, maybe talking to them about, hey, can we get, we've got 100 and the 62 unit isn't fully occupied yet. So we're not quite at that critical mass to justify a full-time manager. But when we get there, maybe say, hey, can we get a dedicated manager so that we can be a little more specific with how we'd like to see our properties run? Because at that point, yeah, most of the rule of thumbs that I hear is you got 100 units, you should be able to support a full-time manager. They're not that far apart, so it's maybe a 10-minute drive. Wouldn't be ideal, but we're not asking somebody to get in their car and go 40 minutes to do a showing. Same with the maintenance tech. It might be something that either we ask for a part-time maintenance tech for our properties, or maybe we can work something out if we found one that we could bring in more of the maintenance side under our umbrella through our network, and then use them more as like leasing up agents or something like that.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Now you mentioned a second property there, 48 units. Mm-hmm. What was the story on that one? When did you guys buy it? Why did you like it? What was the process on that one?
We closed on that one on March 19th of 2020, right as COVID was going down. Yeah, it was interesting. It was a very long process. We had a little bit of a partner issue very early, which actually made it necessary to drop out of contract and then go back under contract under a different ownership entity. Fortunately, the seller was willing to work with us on that. That we do have agency debt on that. It was a bit of a process with COVID. Credit was drying up. Getting to the loan commitment was a bit of a nail biter. So it actually took 5 months to close, which is long, but we stuck with it. We got it closed. And it's fully stabilized. I mean, it's at 94% occupied right now. And the reason it's not higher is because we inherited 2 units when we bought it that were down units, and they are still down units because we have had some turnover that we're just working through before we commit some more significant capital to bring in these couple of units back. So it's going well. Yeah, we've gone from 650, 675 to 800, 850. We've had it about 6 months. So yeah, we've hit our pro forma post renovation projection to the dollar at 850. So that was pretty exciting. And yeah, we're just moving along with that. We still do some sweat equity over there ourselves. I don't mind working. Sometimes you need to get out from behind the computer and actually do something. And when when you can go touch your own properties, the tenants come out and talk to you, and you can learn a little bit about what's going on with management, what maybe some of the tenants' concerns are that may not have trickled down to management, and even to us. Here's a great, for instance, is tenant came out. She was super nice. She was like, "Hey, you guys working?" Like, "Yeah." She goes, "I called in my deck steps there a couple of months ago or something." And she's like, "They're not even connected." And I lean down and I pick up one of her stair treads, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll get that." And you don't, until somebody tells you. I mean, I've walked by that stair tread probably hundreds of times. Looks like it's screwed down, but now I'm keenly aware of a safety issue. And those are the things that you want to make sure you take care of, is the safety stuff, especially since this tenant just came out and told us. So, no longer is like, "Oh, you weren't aware, you picked it up yourself." So that is one of the advantages of being able to visit your property. You can get a sense of things that probably should be taken care of that might not be getting down to the work order. And then I wouldn't say that is anything that our property manager should have picked up on. Of course, if they got called, they should have taken care of it. But just walking by, you would have never known that it was an issue.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for going there, because you get a feel for the property, and you get, I think, a lot more insight into what's going on, right? If your property manager isn't, not in your case, but sometimes, property managers don't always do what they should, right? And maybe they don't handle stuff like they should. And if you ask the tenants what they think about the property, they're going to
they'll tell you. Oh, yeah.
You
don't even have to ask.
Yeah. And they won't hold back either, right? They're going to tell you the warts and all story. I think it's great that you managed to then move on to this 48 unit. I think it'd be interesting to maybe talk about, because a lot of people, I'm sure, after that first property would have thought, okay, I'm not doing another deal until this one is cleared up, or maybe I don't even want to do another deal, right? After going from 85% occupancy to zero, that's a big shock to the system, and something, especially when you don't expect it to happen. Maybe talk about a little bit about your mindset, how you were able to overcome that and move forward and do another deal and be willing to push forward with things.
Yeah, part of why we're comfortable in an uncomfortable situation is because we have seen the business plan work out. It's 3 buildings. We got the first building completely rehabbed and fully occupied at our pro forma rents, and it was about at that time that the stuff really started to hit the fan. So we knew that we were on the right track, and that we just have to get through this difficult period to get the thing finally finished. Maybe if it happened very early and we really hadn't even got a business plan proven out, we might have a different look on it. My partners are all very positive. We're all very positive. We try, be solutions focused. Okay, yes, this is happening. How do we fix it? Because feeling sad about it or getting upset about it, which happens. Don't get me wrong, but if you choose to make that your focus, then you're expending energy on the wrong side of the equation. You gotta save that energy for the solving side of the equation. So yeah, it's just good partners, staying positive, keep working at it, keep looking for solutions. It's not for lack of trying that we haven't gotten things more stabilized than we'd like right now, but we're getting there. We had an appraiser out there today for something that we're working on as a solution. So, and I was just like, hey, we're in this business. Not every deal is great. Every deal is going to be different. Just try not to lose money. If at the end of the day we get our initial capital back to the penny, like you mentioned earlier, I still benefited from the education side of going through the process. So I will still win.
Plus, it's better to have these problems and be working towards your goal and trying to better your life than
absolutely.
And not having that option of improving your life and creating a better lifestyle for yourself.
And and that goes back also to like the network that we have, the people we're involved with. We talk about this a lot. Is if we come up against something and we don't initially have the answer, or we're not quite sure what our next step might be, we're very confident that we have the network to help us figure it out. I bet your experience is the same. Just that I've never met you. We've never talked before, except maybe on Messenger a few times. And people in this industry are very giving with their knowledge. I don't consider you a competitor. If you got a question about something that I've experienced that you might benefit from, shoot me an email. Let's talk about it. And that is something in this industry that still surprises me, is just how willing most people are just to chat about it. It seems like everybody is just excited to be in this business. Yeah.
I agree. I really enjoy that about this community, right? Whether you know each other or not, everyone's very giving, very friendly, and they just love it. Most, there's very few people in this business, I think, that are in it because all they care about is the dollar amount, right? I think most people, like yourself, they really enjoy it, and it's something that they feel passionate about, and they love helping people, I think, as well. That's what I've noticed, that there's a lot of good people in this business as well.
Yeah, I've met a lot of friends. I mean, we do business together. I've met friends that we don't do business together. But yeah, we're all just people, and we're all just interested in real estate at the same time. So
yeah, absolutely. I think I warned you beforehand, but this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate.
Yeah, man, bring it on.
Wrestling themed real estate questions. So the first one would be, what would your wrestling name be? If you were a wrestler, what would your wrestling name be?
I thought long and hard about this, probably minutes. No, but I was going to age myself. Back in the day when I was in high school, we rolled around and we had CBs.
Okay.
And my handle back then was Average Guy. So I would use that as my wrestling name, kind of figuring it'd be nice to be like that everyman figure.
Yeah.
That like you could just grab right down the middle of the fairway of the audience and be like, that's my guy. So just Average Guy. Okay. Everybody would think it's them in the ring.
Yeah, everyone can resonate with that. Yeah, the Average Guy. I love that. Every wrestler has a special move. What would your special move in wrestling be?
And this goes back in the 90s. I had Fridays and Saturdays off. And when my kids were young, we would watch Thursday Night Raw or whatever. And my girls and I would wrestle. They would do the atomic butt drop, which was the move we made up, which is basically just running at somebody and jumping on them butt first. But my move...
Sounds deadly.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's tremendous. I don't know how anybody survives it. But my move, like wrestling related, is underwriting and analysis. That's where I would somehow figure out a way to take you out with that.
That's a great strength, because obviously it's apartment investing and a lot of real estate investing is numbers based, right? It's all in the numbers, right? The numbers will tell you what to do. And so if you're able to understand the numbers and able to underwrite deals, that's it.
Yeah. And like back in Alaska, when I was getting started, that was one of the few things that I could do. I did go on property tours. I actually went out of state 4 times to visit different markets, but that's what I found that I could really educate myself on and spend time on, because I had fewer options to grow myself within the business. So it kind of ended up being analyzing and analysis. So, and I enjoy it. I actually do enjoy it, although sometimes I have trouble staying awake. But
yeah, if you I have that problem if I stare at the screen for too
long.
Yeah. It starts to get heavy. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken in your real estate?
Yeah, we talked about it for like 10 minutes.
I assume if you had a worse one than that, I was going to feel bad for you.
Yeah, no. And then it's, it's like that last closing on the 49 unit was the first project that me and my main partner went like A to Z on, through the whole process, the contract process, the lending process. So it's a lot. And it moves very quickly. And sometimes there's occasionally phone calls that you don't really want to make because maybe you overlooked something and you have to change your underwriting. And sometimes it's not in the direction you want to. And you got to call your potential partners and be like, this came up and we got to talk about this. Those aren't the easiest things to do, but fortunately, those are the things that have to be done. And when they have to be done, you just figure out how to do it. And that's what's great about getting into a deal, is like, you're no longer dabbling, you are now doing, and the conversations change dramatically when you go from thinking about it to doing it.
So sometimes you just have to have those awkward conversations, right?
Yeah, you do. And usually they end up fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
found that as well. They're usually not as bad as you can create some.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. So was there a moment you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump? What was it and how did you overcome it?
I think I used that last description was for that answer. It was just, it's like those difficult calls that you have to make, because I'm fairly introverted, actually. I love talking about this stuff, but I'm not a super social person. So maybe the biggest thing for me getting off the top rope is just learning how to talk to people and network and just get out of my comfort zone, because now we have a meetup. We actually have a podcast, me and my partner. And so that was a big thing that I had to undertake as personal growth, was just opening up a little bit more and talking to people.
Well, that's huge, because obviously this is a people business, right? And your network equals your net worth, right? It's as simple as that sounds. It's pretty true, and I found that to be true. The more you can kind of get out there and talk to people and create relationships, it pays you back a long way. And it's, again, you talked about that being uncomfortable, right? Getting outside your comfort zone is, on the other side of your discomfort is, a lot of success, right? I've always heard that saying, that on the other side of discomfort is a lot of success. And if you know that, so you can kind of push yourself to kind of get there. So I appreciate you sharing that. So thank you so much, Greg, for talking all about that, talking about your pain, talking about your successes, talking about, everything that's kind of gone on. It's a fascinating story, and, it's still continuing and still going to get better and better. I'm sure of it. Before we go, for anyone who's interested, maybe talk a little bit about your podcast. Where can people hear that? Where can they find it?
Yeah, it's the Real Wealth Solutions podcast. It's on most platforms. We originally started to go down the line that we were going to get really granular about the operating side of business, but it's turned more into just talking to people we know, kind of like what we're doing. And we have found just in feedback from, we don't have a ton of listeners, but they really appreciate hearing other people's stories that are not unlike them. And I don't mean to take anything away from the people that have great success and they've been on podcasts, but sometimes you hear some of these very big names on a podcast. If you hear them on another podcast, 85% of what they said you're going to hear again. So I think I know I personally benefit from hearing people talk about how they've gotten through situations, and that's what's so great about a podcast. It's very conversational. So yeah, it's a Real Wealth Solutions podcast, very laid back. We're generally just talking about real estate journeys, and we do touch on a few different asset classes, short-term rentals, storage, things like that.
Cool. And then any social media platform, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, realwealth.solutions is our website. We're on Facebook under the same name. We're on LinkedIn. If you're in the Tri-Cities area, or even some people drive up from Knoxville, we do host a meetup in Johnson City every other Tuesday. That's about it. Yeah. And then, yeah, feel free to contact me through, we've got a contact form. It's greg@realwealth.solutions. I'm more than willing to hop on a call with people.
Cool. I'll include all the links to those in the description on both the podcast and YouTube. So, Greg, thank you so much for sharing everything today. It's been a really interesting story. I really enjoyed hearing everything, the ups and downs, right? And that's part of real estate investing, is just lessons learned and everything with that. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. I appreciate it. It was a good time.
And, yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Greg.